Hey everybody, it's Dave from ResinForce Products, and we're going to talk about various primers that you can use for your epoxy floor systems. I'm going to go through each product and explain the ups and downs to each and where you may want to use one versus the other on the job. So getting started, we have different options for a moisture vapor barrier. We have a clear option, and we also have a pigmented option. The nice thing about having a pigmented moisture vapor barrier is after you do your concrete prep and patchwork, the pigment hides all your color variations in the concrete, any different irregularities as far as colors, transitions, whatever you've got going on in your actual concrete substrate, your pigmented moisture barrier will hide that. Or if you're going with your clear, great. You'll just probably want to follow that with another pigmented coat of solids epoxy most likely. But we do have both options available. We have lower viscosity, most primers are low viscosity, but we also have one that's a little bit higher viscosity and one a little bit lower viscosity. So we like to take pride in giving you options, and you can pick which one you want to use. Next over, we have Polyurea. This comes available in gray, tan, or untinted. The benefit to the untinted Polyurea is you can add a tint pack, and then you can do it any color you want. This is most commonly used for flake floor systems. There's others you can use it for, but 95% of the time we're selling it to customers to use as a primer for a flake floor. Next over, we have two different variations of 100% solids epoxy. They are both 100% solids. This one's going to be a little bit lower viscosity. This one's going to be a little bit higher viscosity. Again, options to the contractor. Some people like the lower viscosities. Some people like the higher viscosities. You can use this as a body coat, as a slurry coat, as a primer. You could even use that as a top coat, but it could amber if you're using it as a top coat. So you can do clear, you can do pigmented gray, tan, whatever you want. You also have the option of adding an accelerator to make this essentially a rapid cure epoxy. You can use any of these as a primer. Just know that your moisture vapor barriers are going to hold back moisture pressure. Your polyurea will not, and your epoxy will not. Knowing your boundaries as far as the substrate, what you're selling for the floor, if you did a moisture test, you may want to do only a moisture vapor barrier as your prime coat if moisture is a concern. If moisture is not a concern, or it's an elevated substrate, meaning maybe there's like a basement underneath the room you're doing, and it's a commercial building, for example, you don't need a moisture barrier because it's just air underneath it. You can use polyurea or you can use epoxy, but all different options. When you're using clear, just know that anytime you do a clear primer, you're gonna have to follow with something solid pigmented to hide your color variations underneath it. Or if you're going pigmented, it's kind of a one and done deal. Now, coming back to where you might use different products. The pigmented moisture vapor barrier is something that a lot of contractors are flaking right into. That way you have some moisture protection, but it's a single coat system that you can just broadcast your flake right into as 100% broadcast. You can't really broadcast into a clear because you're gonna see the ghosting from the concrete coming up through the flake. Whereas if you use a pigmented moisture vapor barrier and you broadcast into that, then at least you have the solid pigment that's kind of hiding the variations of the concrete, and then you flake 100% broadcast into that, and then you just top coat from there. Another alternative is you can do a moisture vapor barrier, and then you can do 100% solids epoxy and then broadcast into the epoxy. That would give you more moisture protection, because if you're flaking right into your moisture barrier, you're actually technically penetrating that membrane and you're not gonna have as much moisture protection. But if you do a moisture vapor barrier on its own as a primer membrane basically, then you can do your 100% solids epoxy on top of that, flake into that. That's gonna give you the maximum moisture protection. If you're doing just 100% solids epoxy or polyurea direct to concrete, just know you're not really gonna have much moisture protection, but if it's not an issue, doesn't matter. Pigmented would be the way to go if you're broadcasting into that. Or if you're doing a metallic floor system, you could go clear or pigmented, it doesn't matter. But again, if you're doing clear first, you'll wanna go pigmented on top of the clear to hide that, and then you can do your metallics on top of that. Another option, if you're doing quartz, whether it's a solid color broadcast quartz or multicolor decorative quartz, maybe a double broadcast, then your primer really doesn't matter because you're gonna have multiple coats on top of that. So if you wanna have your primer be clear epoxy or clear moisture vapor barrier, generally speaking, those more expensive floors, I would do a moisture barrier anyway, just as a safety net for yourself. And then that way you've got a nice primer, it's gonna penetrate, create a really good root system into the concrete pores. And then you're gonna follow with various coats, pigmented with quartz, and then maybe a clear top coat or a pigmented top coat. But either way, that way you've got really good primer that's gonna get a really good mechanical bond and chemical bond to that concrete. One of the things that we take great pride in as a distributor is providing options to our contractors. So you'll notice various packaging, various different products within the ResinForce line. Primarily, we have higher viscosity and lower viscosity options. You'll notice the labels are a little bit different too. But the reason we do that is because, again, we're gonna make recommendations for what we would suggest you to do, but you have the choice to do whatever you want, realistically, as long as the products you're using are gonna be used properly. If you want a higher viscosity product or you want a lower viscosity product and you know the boundaries of both, if you want a pigmented moisture vapor barrier or you want a clear moisture vapor barrier, again, we have options for all the above as a distributor. That's our job, to make sure that you have the tools you need. We always have them in stock. We always have products available, and then we have options available to you for you to choose from. And then you make the decision. We educate you on how to use those products properly. If you have any questions about any of these primers or body coats, feel free to reach out at any time, and we're happy to help and answer any questions you have. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.